Maybe you've heard the story of the man who asked his friend a question, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? What is the difference? And so the man's friend responded, I don't know, and I don't care. Without realizing it, he'd actually answered the question. The I don't know is the ignorance, and the I don't care is the apathy. And I want to talk just for a moment about that word apathy. To be apathetic really means that you really don't care. It actually comes from a Greek word apathos. A negates the pathos, no feeling, no emotion, indifferent to things. And there are times in life that we can become very indifferent to circumstances, indifferent to our relationship with God, indifferent to our relationships with other people. We can get to that place where we just don't seem to care. There's a story in the Bible in Haggai chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. I'm going to read this passage for you, where God's people had come to a place of apathy in their relationship with Him. Let me read you the story. Now, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. It has come out of your apathy. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it. This is why the Lord Almighty says, give careful thought to your ways. The thing I want to emphasize there today from that passage is this phrase, give careful thought to your ways. The context of this passage is the fact that the children of God, the people of God, the southern kingdom, had come back to Jerusalem from Babylonian captivity. And they'd been given an instruction from God to rebuild the temple. But instead of rebuilding the temple, they'd rebuilt their own homes, and they'd become very comfortable, and they'd become apathetic. And their apathy had left them void of energy, opportunity, or desire even to actually rebuild God's temple. They were missing blessing in their life because they had not put God first. And the reason they were not putting God first was because they'd become indifferent in their relationship with God.
What are some of the great enemies of the Christian faith? The things that distract us from walking with Christ? Well, first of all, know this. You're living in a world, most of us are awake about 16 hours a day, in a world that is constantly bombarding us with that which is not true. Not only that, but bombarding us with distractions. Not just evil things, but even good things that are used at times to take us away from the most excellent things. And what is the most excellent thing? Our growth in the knowledge of Jesus Christ and the deepening of our love for God and Him. Now, so there's distractions, constant distractions, and there are things pulling on us. And then we must also realize that the Bible does teach that there is a person called the devil, and that there are fallen angels called demons. And yes, they are also constantly laboring to get the Christian off track. Now, when we think about getting the Christian off track, we may be thinking about that the Christian falls into some gross sin, and that can happen. But the way in which the devil most works against our soul is to make us apathetic, to get us looking in the wrong direction, to get us thinking about things that aren't the most important eternal things. And the question is, how can we avoid this? Well, if I'm in the world 16 hours a day awake, and for 16 hours a day the world is bombarding me with its distractions and its falsehoods, and I'm in the Word of God no time at all, of course I'm going to lose the battle of the mind. So what must I do? You must come to the conviction that you cannot walk with God apart from renewing your mind in the Word of God and prayer. I've been a preacher for many, many years, and yet I'm only as spiritual as my devotional life today.
So let me encourage you, when you're analyzing apathy, when you're thinking about how do I engage with those around me who just seem indifferent, remember, persist in prayer. Be present in their lives. Find opportunities for probing to understand what are some of the reasons that they may be indifferent or may just not care. And then finally, be patient. As God has been patient with you, be patient with them as well.
For the past few years, sociologists and journalists have been describing millennials as the burnout generation. Now there are reports that burnout and stress are on the rise with Gen Z as well. And then there's the reality of spiritual burnout. The inability to feel the presence and power of God. A loss of desire for spiritual things. In the Bible, we see examples of spiritual disillusionment. From the frustrations of Moses as he led the children of Israel, to Elijah fleeing into the wilderness, feeling isolated and forgotten. Read the writings of monks and monasteries in medieval times, and even there, you find similar battles with spiritual apathy, a loss of passion and compassion. Burnout isn't just a pastor problem. It isn't just a workplace problem. It's a spiritual problem. And this challenge affects the church. What is going on, and how can we respond?
You may get to a place where you feel like your heart is not in it. Apathy might be a part of your journey, but it doesn't have to be the dominant narrative about how we approach the most important things in our lives. God is trying to enter those spaces in our lives, in our communities, in our families, to remind us that there is a reason for you to be excited again. That there's a reason for you to have joy. There's a reason for you to have fulfillment. There's going to come a certain point along this journey where you become indifferent about something that you once loved. But remember, you serve a resurrecting God that brings life and wants you to come alive even in the most difficult of situations.